Ever found yourself spiraling down a late night rabbit hole of what am I meant to do and why haven't I found it yet? And let's be honest, who hasn't? Then you're in the right place. I'm Theresa White, career clarity expert and 5-time certified career coach, and I'm here to help you navigate the question of how to find a career that truly lights you up. On Career Clarity Unlocked, we're all about those light bulb moments. I'm talking to people who are still trying to figure out what they're meant to do, coaching them live to reach that magical, yes, this is it moment. And we'll also hear from those who've already found their dream careers and figure out exactly how they did it. Whether you're looking for inspiration or actionable advice on finding a career you love, I've got you covered. Time to unlock some career clarity. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Career Clarity Unlocked. If you can relate to doing everything right, you know, the good grades, the fancy job title, the picture perfect LinkedIn bio, and still keep thinking, wait, is this really it? Then you need to hear this episode. Today, we're diving into what happens when you hit all the success checkboxes, but still feel disconnected from your true self. And honestly, this is so much more common than you may think. We're going to be talking about redefining success, reclaiming your voice, especially if you're someone who's been quietly achieving in the background, and learning how to actually listen to your intuition, not just the noisy expectations from society, your family, or your inner perfectionist. So get ready for a conversation that's honest, inspiring, and maybe even a little healing. My guest today is none other than the amazing Linda Raynier, who is a transformational speaker and the author of The Quiet Achiever, a groundbreaking book helping introverted professionals redefine confidence, communication, and leadership on their own terms. With nearly 1 million YouTube subscribers and over 2.6 million LinkedIn Learning students and a growing community on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Redefining, Linda has become a trusted voice for driven, quiet professionals who feel overlooked and underestimated and are ready to lead with calm, grounded authenticity while stepping into the recognition and impact they deserve. A former Big Four CPA turned recruiter and global career strategist, she has helped thousands of professionals unlock confidence, enhance their communication, and accelerate career advancement while staying true to themselves. Through powerful storytelling and practical strategies, Linda challenges outdated definitions of leadership and champions a future where quiet achievers are seen, heard, and celebrated. Let's get started. I am so excited to welcome Linda Raynier to Career Clarity Unlocked. Welcome, Linda.
Hi, Theresa. Thank you so much for having me here.
Oh my God, it's such an honor to have you. And I want to kick it off with hearing more about your story. Take us back to when you were younger. How did your professional journey start? And also, did you always know that at one point you're going to have almost 1 million YouTube subscribers, going to be a transformational speaker and an author and speaking on big stages? Has that always been your vision?
I can tell you not always, but clarity started to come to me over time, and we can definitely talk about that and intuition and how that's played a role in my career. But so in terms of my story, I grew up in a blue collar family. My parents were refugees from Vietnam. They came to Canada after the Vietnam War. They had me, they had my younger sister. I was born and raised here in Toronto in Canada. And I grew up with the, typical immigrant mindset, which was work hard, study hard, get a good job, and you'll be successful. And so that's what I did. I worked hard. I got good grades. I was valedictorian. I got, scholarships, all of these things. I wanted to growing up, I already had this mindset as someone who was very driven. So I call myself a quiet achiever, which is also the title of my book. I was a quiet achiever where I was introverted. I kept to myself, but I was also very driven and really goal oriented. And so, if my parents had told me, just work hard and you'll be successful. That's what I wanted. I wanted to gain their approval and their validation and, work towards those goals. So that's what I did. And I eventually, my very first career was into accounting because that was the stable, prestigious path at the time. And that to me felt like success. And it did not feel successful once I became an accountant because first, I didn't enjoy the work. Second, I wasn't doing well in the work. Like I just because I didn't enjoy it, when you're not good at something, you don't enjoy it. And so I realized very quickly, oh, what I was told about success and working hard and getting that dream job, how come that's not transpiring for me? Why do I not feel good? And I realized, okay, I needed to pivot and shift. And so once I received the CPA designation, that was when I pivoted into the world of recruiting. And I ended up becoming a CPA headhunter, essentially, meaning I looked for other CPAs and found them opportunities. And that was all the way up to C-suite level, CFO level opportunities. And I placed hundreds of people as a recruiter. I did really well. And that was where I realized, started to get a hint. And this was me in my mid 20s, where I started to get a hint. Oh, I do have skills and talents because up until then, all I was focused on was studying. And then once I got into the world of accounting, my confidence went to an all-time low because I was not doing well in that accounting job. And then I felt like, I really didn't have a lot of self-esteem. Then when I went into recruiting, all of a sudden it boosted back up, but it was based on the output, the outcomes that I was producing, meaning the number of placements I made every month determined my value. How much money I was starting to make was determining my value. And I was doing really well because it was a commission-based type of role. And so I started to get this new sense of confidence, but it was grounded on an unstable foundation, I would say. And then after a few years of being a recruiter, I realized, there's something within me that I feel I could do more. And I think a lot of quiet achievers, I mean, people who are naturally motivated, they feel this way too. There's more that I could do. There's a bigger impact I could make. And that was how I felt. And I felt like just placing people into jobs was good, but I feel like there were thousands of people that I could not help because every time I spoke to them on the phone or I read their resume, I knew they didn't know how to communicate their value. They didn't know how to sell themselves. They didn't know how to share with me why they would be a fit for the jobs. And so I had to ignore these people. And I thought, you know what? I started tuning into my own intuition. I started doing a little bit of meditation and doing some visioning exercises. This is at the tail end of my recruiting career where I was really wanting to think bigger about my life. And I saw this vision of me sitting just like I am right now in front of a camera and speaking to the camera and putting out videos on YouTube. And so I quit my job. We got to a point where I just didn't want to keep working that 9 to 5. I knew I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to do my own thing. So I quit my job. This was in 2016, April of 2016, quit my job. 6 months later, not even 3, 4, 5 months later, I put my first YouTube video out. So in the fall of that year. And then the second video and then third video. And by the third or fourth video, it went viral because it was all about how to answer, tell me about yourself. And that video now still has like the most views out of all my videos. It's like 24 million views. And it basically skyrocketed my business. Like it's what launched my business is what I want to say. And so that was when I became what was known as a career strategist, career coach. And I started offering courses and one-on-one private coaching, premium coaching programs, and all of these things. And, that lasted me well after COVID, where I kind of rode this wave of selling courses at that time was like the easiest thing for me. And then life happened. So my story is very long. So hopefully people are still engaged, but life happened in 2020, 2021. I had my two boys back to back. And so I became a stay-at-home mom because I had two under two boys that needed me, both in diapers. I couldn't keep working at the pace that I was working before, where I was constantly putting out content, working with clients. So I decided, I'm going to take a break, and it's COVID anyways. Nobody's really doing anything. I'm just going to stop working. And then I took care of my kids, but I had an identity crisis during that time as well. And we could talk about that because I was no longer the successful, in my mind, no longer successful Linda Raynier. I was now stay-at-home Linda Raynier, stay-at-home mom Linda Raynier. And then my husband got sick at the end of 2023, which is a whole story in itself. But we went through a full-on deep inner healing journey. And that was when I came to the realization that ultimately, this whole thing that I've been chasing my entire life, this idea of success, this identity that I wanted to create and showcase to the world of me being this confident, successful businesswoman person, it had to come crumbling down. And I realized that there is so much more to life than how others view me and the things that the money that I'm able to make or the success that I'm able to portray. I knew that I started to recognize, because of everything going on in my family, that there was so much more to life. And 6 months later, I got offered a book deal from Wiley. That's a whole other story in itself. And that now is the premise of my book, The Quiet Achiever, Your Journey to Authentic Confidence. Because ultimately what it has come down to, realization is for me, is we all want to be recognized and seen and heard for who we are authentically. And we were raised in a society and in a family where we're told, just achieve, do more, gain more, acquire more, and people will then value you. And then maybe you'll feel better about yourself. But I recognize that it all happens from within. Nothing out there is ever going to fulfill what's empty inside. The work has to be from the inside out. And so that's a very long story, as a long answer to your question, but that is essentially my story up until how I got to where I am.
Your story is just incredible, Linda. And I remember when we met in person in Toronto and I first heard your story, and I was so fascinated by the ups and downs that you went through and how it brought you to where you are. And I really love that you talk about value being something intrinsic, but actually we're being told achieve more, do more, and that will make you valuable. And this entire society is teaching us that. This is how most of us grow up. And it's
Yeah.
actually not the reality. How did that shift for you personally from realizing it's internal?
Well, it's because my entire life it was all about the external, like buying the big house, having the nice designer purses, going on the nice fancy vacations. Like it was all about what are the things that I can acquire or achieve that I would think fulfill me or fuel me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only until my husband got sick. We were in this midst of him healing. Now he's deemed a miracle, by the way, for those that don't know, but he's a miracle by doctors, cancer free and all of that. But, it was during that time where I realized I don't know if it was in a one moment or if it was in during those months where I looked at my kids, I looked at him and I said, this is really all that matters. I mean, the yes, hard work is good. Yes, achieving goals that you have for yourself. Absolutely. Very good because, that's part of your soul's desires to grow and expand and ascend to that next level. But at the same time, achieving for the sake of gaining what you would think is approval or validation or a sense of fulfillment, that is not where the answer is because it all already is within. It's already in front of you. It's where you're at. And only until I recognized that was I able to feel that shift was able to happen. I had to be sh shaken up. Is that the right way to say it? I had to be shaken up um, with the circumstance like that for me to recognize that, oh, this is all a projection. This world is all a projection of what's going on from within. And if I want to change my external reality, it has to be that I first have to change my internal reality. And whatever happens on the outside is whatever happens on the outside. But I need to know how I'm feeling first. And so it took me down this path of self-discovery, of identifying and getting down to the root, which is what I talk a lot about in The Quiet Achiever, is getting to the root of your fear-based beliefs, getting to the root of the pain that sits beneath the surface of the smile and the, happy demeanor and the confident demeanor. There is the anxiety, there's the insecurity, there is the self-doubt that's sitting beneath the surface that if it is not addressed, it will continue to gnaw at you, bite at you, chew at you, and get you to pay attention. And sometimes you don't listen for a very long time, and then something big happens where it's like, okay, I have to pay attention now. And that was the case for me. And I genuinely feel in the heart of, in the seat of my soul that this message is really important at a time right now where the world of work is changing so much for so many people, with AI coming in and quiet achievers. Our entire lives are dependent upon has been depending upon our efforts, our hard work, the knowledge, the degrees that we've gained. And now there's a chance that the world of work is changing so much that people may be losing their jobs left, right, and center. They're having to find new jobs, and those jobs aren't really there anymore in the way that they were. And I'm seeing this coming from a recruiting and career coaching background. And that's where I feel this is why this message needs to be out there, because people need to recognize and see that the outside world isn't going to provide them the security that they're looking for. They need to start from within, and then from there they'll gain the clarity as to what do I need to do to provide the, let's say it's like financial security and all those physical things that you need for yourself. But the work starts going inward first.
When you shared the moment where you looked at your kids and your husband and realized this is all that matters, that gave me such chills. And it's so true, because you checked all the boxes of make money, go on fancy vacation, buy big house, right? You had checked all the boxes. And it took that moment for you to realize, you're like, whoa, this is what actually matters.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that will bring true happiness and fulfillment. And I'm wondering, I hope that for a lot of people, they can have that realization without having such a personal tragedy happen. What
Yes.
do you think are some moments or times where you would encourage people to be like, pay attention? This, what you're chasing isn't it. It's not the thing. We got to shift. And how can we shift?
Yes, that's a great question. And I actually think to answer that, it's going to be very individual. But what I'm observing and seeing is that there are some people that are, it's when they're waking up every day and they have that sense of dread and that sense of anxiety, and they go to bed and they have that sense of stress that they carry with them to bed. And so they're in this cycle of constant stress and anxiety and low level, discontent. Then I would say if you're finally realizing that you're perhaps living this way, this is a good opportunity where instead of waiting for it to build to a bigger situation to get you to wake up, now is the time to actually explore that. Because now it's more manageable when it's, on the outside, everything seems to be okay, but I'm not feeling all that excited or happy within myself, fulfilled within myself. That's a great place to start asking the questions. But sometimes people, like we get all busy, we can get easily distracted, and we can ignore that feeling very quickly by scrolling on our phones or doing things that are going to take us away from that low level discontent that we have. But if we're willing to be aware enough, I feel like that's the best place to be, because you have less uh, to worry about in terms of losing. Like you're still, let's say, working in a job, but maybe you're realizing, you know what, this is not where I see myself for the next 5 years, and I'm seeing that maybe my career path is going to shift and change. Let's explore what that would look like now. What would I like? What have I learned about myself in this role that I enjoy versus what I don't enjoy? What would my next thing look like? And for some people, it might be they might want to switch industries altogether. They might want to go on to into a different career altogether. Maybe they want to start their own businesses, but without taking the time to ask the questions, you won't know. And then you could end up in a cycle of continuously, day after day, year after year, falling into this pattern. And then all of a sudden, one day, something happens where it's like, oh my gosh, now what? I didn't do the pre-work of asking myself the hard questions of doing that self-investigation. And now I'm in fear mode. And when you're overcome by fear, you could start making choices and decisions that, you're doing it because it's out of fear rather than out of clear intention and clarity. And I know this is something that you talk about too, Theresa, but it really is I would say like it's the self-awareness. If you know that you're feeling unhappy right now or discontent or feeling a little uneasy, this is a great place to be because it means, oh, this is an opportunity for you to turn inward.
I love that, Linda. And absolutely. And going back to the current economic, political, AI, all of this reality that we're living through right now, it is so easy to be driven by fear. And I would imagine, especially quiet achievers who are grown up to be like achieve more, do more, have that paycheck, move up, get promoted. And all of the world around us is changing so rapidly, we can't even keep up with it. It's so normal to be driven by fear because I need a paycheck. My worth, my value depends on me getting a promotion. My worth and value depends on me getting a paycheck. But now all of a sudden, everyone's being laid off. Companies are moving, changing. What's the first step someone can take to shift out of this fear and be fueled by something other than fear?
That's a great question. Some people will tell you, oh, just envision what you want and then go after that. But I can tell you from experience is that you can do that. But if you haven't addressed the little inklings of the resistance that pops up, what can happen is that you're going to fuel that vision with anxiety. So you're going to go after that vision with anxiety rather than with grounded intention and clarity. And there's no right or wrong. But okay, so if I backtrack to make it simpler and easier, because I feel like I'm talking a few levels beyond. So the first step would be, like I said, it would be to ask yourself, okay, what am I feeling right now? Okay, I'm not feeling happy in this job, for example, or I'm not liking the work, or I feel that I'm meant for more, or I feel that I can grow more. Okay, so you get clarity on that. You ask yourself those questions. What are you actually feeling in this current moment? Then from there, what I would actually say is then jump to the vision. Now, okay, you know that this is not where you want to be. What does what you want to be kind of look like? Your heart kind of will give you a sense, maybe a little bit of a vision, a visual, if you're a visual person, maybe it'll give you a feeling, maybe you'll hear something. So you tune inwards and you ask yourself, what would that thing look like? And so as an example for me, when I was in the recruiting world and I knew I wanted to start my own business, I did this exercise where I sat with myself and I visualized what would my ideal life look like. And it was about me sitting in front of my laptop in my own home office where I was working for myself, where I was working, ideally a few hours a day and working with clients. And I just felt like I was doing my own thing. I was running my own schedule. That was for me personally what I felt. And so then from there, you have the vision. So you have the vision. Now it's about, okay, how do I go from where I am to that vision? What are the physical steps that I would need to take? And so once you start coming up with sort of the more practical physical steps, it really is about taking the action, but also being self-aware as you take each action. Because what's going to happen is resistance is going to come up, fear is going to come up with each step, and you're going to potentially sabotage yourself where you don't end up taking the second step. And so if you can get clarity as to, okay, hold on, now I'm going to take this next step. What is coming up within me? Oh, there's this fear of failure. There's fear of being judged, this fear of disappointing others, disappointing myself, this fear of regret. All right, let's explore that. What could be the worst thing that could happen? And so you essentially have to dissect every step along the way to support yourself to be able to take these steps. Does that make sense? Rather than what I've seen in the past is people kind of go blind. And I'll be honest, I am kind of that person too, where I would just go in blind head first, but I would crash if something didn't work out. And it would actually cause me to sort of like hermit away and hide for maybe even months, burnout. And that's what happened to me actually in 2020, 21. It was due to burnout, but also with my kids, where I just kind of hid away from the world. Instead of that happening, I mean, just because of experience, I would say be more intentional. You don't have to push yourself so far forward into doing the things. You just have to take that step intentionally, if that makes sense. And so as each step goes, you're going to get closer to that vision and that goal that you want, but you're also doing it in a way where you feel safe doing it rather than in anxiety mode, fear mode, worry mode, crazy anxiety
Yes.
mode. Yeah.
I love starting with the vision. And that's something I'm big on when I talk about clarity of starting with that vision. And something I work with a lot of my clients on when we have that or start building that vision of what the future looks like, all of those limiting beliefs are going to jump in. They're like, no one's going to pay you for that. This is not going to work out. Who are you to do this? There's no way this can be successful. Or who would ever hire you for this role? No one's going to pay you. How do you work, or what are your recommendations when we're thinking about this vision that we want to have for our life? How do we work with all of those voices that most of us are programmed to have jump in the moment we actually allow ourselves to dream?
Yes, I love that question. And this is actually something that I teach in the book as well, in the Quiet Achiever. And it's a framework that I call flu, FLU. So the reason why I call it flu is because when you think about having a flu or a fever, let's say more accurately, what's going on? You know, your body is burning up and, from a physical perspective, your body's actually trying to excrete the infection or the virus that's sitting in their body, right? So it's trying to get it out. And that's the same thing I feel is the process for burning up those fear-based beliefs. So this fear of, are people going to pay me? Am I good enough for it? Yada, yada, yada. Each one, in a sense, is its own virus. It's its own strain of some sort of infection. And you need to, if you see it as that, then you can recognize that, okay, well, I also then need to remove it from my system. How do I remove it? By burning it up. Burning it up the way that you would burn up in a fever. And so flu stands for feel, label, and uncover the underlying belief. So feel meaning allow yourself to feel that emotion that comes up with that fear. So the fear of, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough for this. No one's going to pay me. Okay, feel that. What does that feel like in your body? Your heart probably is pounding, your palms may be getting sweaty, maybe you're shaking, whatever it is. Allow your body to do is it wants to express itself. So you allow it to express. Then L is to label. What is this feeling? What am I feeling exactly? So you can say it's, I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling whatever. Labeling is pretty easy because our mind can tell us, okay, well, this is what you're feeling and we can pinpoint it. But then the next part is the biggest part, which is you uncover the underlying belief. So it's like, okay, I'm feeling this a fear of not being successful. What is the underlying belief around that? What am I actually saying? Okay, so I'm feeling fear. What is the underlying root of this fear? And what I mean by that is you need to get to the root, to the basis of where this came from. Meaning, most likely, and I'm not a therapist, but most likely somewhere in our childhood, in our upbringing, in our programming, we were told to believe this about ourselves, that if we were to go after something that is different from the crowd, that was bigger than what other people have achieved before, that for us, we're not good enough to do that. It's some form of I'm not good enough worthiness. And so if we can pinpoint, like, actually, the reason why I feel this way is because of this belief that I have. Once you start piecing all that together, guess what? That fear dissipates. It actually starts to it starts to release, is what I've experienced for myself. And you'll feel yourself lighten up. And that belief won't have as strong of a hold on you anymore because it basically was like a crying baby that wanted to be soothed. You just needed to pick it up, hold it, soothe it, give it what it needed, its attention, and say, okay, it's okay. After the other, with every fear-based belief that comes up, you will start to feel more at ease within yourself and more grounded. And things will change. Your voice will change. I feel like for me, that happened. My voice used to be really high pitched. My voice has since then lowered over the last little while. You'll feel much more calm. You won't feel that anxiety when having to, like, I have so many quiet achiever clients who are so afraid of speaking up in a meeting at work. Why? Because the anxiety and the fear of I'm not good enough comes up. We need to address it at the root level. Then you'll be able to share your ideas clearly. Does that
Oh my
make
God,
sense?
I love this framework so much, Linda. The flu of really feeling, because when we have a fever, we can't do anything other than actually feel it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then sitting with it and actually uncovering it and then releasing it. That was such amazing. And I this what your answer just so brought me back to as we were sitting at the dinner table, I believe, at Go Play Spa in Toronto in the summer. And you had also
Yeah.
shared that this holding it as a baby. And it's something that I personally really resonate with and talk about a lot too, is pick up that feeling like it is a baby and take care of it. And it
Yes.
becomes a lot less loud and much more. Sometimes it's reasonable. It's like it makes sense. You're a little one who really believes that if you speak up, you'll be dismissed or whatever happened in your childhood. And it's wired into our brain when that happened. And it makes sense for this child to still believe, like, yes, it makes sense you believe that. And also, I'm older now, and even if it were to happen, I'll survive that. I can take that risk and then slowly take those steps to overcome the fears we carry.
Yes, I remember when you talked about the family systems, right? That was what it was called, that
Internal
whole
family systems,
methodology.
yes.
Internal family systems, yes. And I loved it because I felt like it resonated so much with, I mean, this baby concept, nobody taught that to me. It just was something that intuitively, through the process of having to burn up my own pain, I realized, oh, these fears are just crying babies. And then, yeah, so and especially as women, we know exactly how to address a crying baby. I mean, if we're really in touch with that feminine side of ours, but you know exactly what to do. And so it becomes a very intuitive process over time. It becomes natural and you don't feel like you have to force it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I love, as you know, I love internal family systems so much because of how intuitive it is. For me, it just makes sense. Exactly the way it's
Yes.
like a baby or a child part or a younger part of yourself that carries that fear, that belief, and it just needs attention. The longer you push it away, and that is always something that in the past never resonated with me, is like, oh, if you feel the fear, just push it away and do it anyway. I'm like, that fear isn't
Oh,
going away when
right.
I push it away. It'll just become louder and louder and louder. But the moment I sit with it and pay attention and understand where it's coming from, it softens.
I love that. And that is truly the messaging that we hear so often is like, just feel the fear and do it anyway. Like, yes, okay, in some instances you kind of have to. If you're about to go on stage and you're afraid, yeah, you're just gonna have to do it anyway. But it would be so much better if you address the fear maybe at least 24 hours before the event so that you could show up in a more calm way. I know there were so many instances where before going on stage, I did not prepare myself mentally and I thought, oh, I'd be fine. And then I freak out the minute before and then my voice cracks. I'm not delivering it the way that I want. It's not landing. And I regret it afterwards. Like if only I'd done some inner work beforehand, but you don't know that until things happen. So, yes, I totally agree. Instead of pushing it away, unless we have no choice, better to work on it so that in those instances where it might come up again, you are coming from a very different angle.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. Thanks for sharing that. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I saw the power of your intuition in person, but also heard you speak a lot about intuition as a leadership asset, something we don't hear a lot about in corporate. How can someone, especially if it is someone likely to be the quiet achiever who is analytical, corporate trained, structured, doing things that make sense, how can they start learning leaning into their intuition, and why do you recommend doing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I truly believe is that when it comes to quiet achievers, we are quiet for a reason. And the quiet isn't necessarily that, like I said, we're not hermits, we're not mutes. It's not like we can't talk. Quiet just means we prefer our own energy, our own space. Why? Because we are sensitive. We actually can feel and observe and sense things from other people, pick up things from other people more than maybe the average person. And I'm not saying every single quiet achiever is like this, but at least the ones that I resonate with are because I know I'm like this. And so because I know that I'm sensitive as a quiet achiever, I know that that means I can feel and tune into things that perhaps the average person can't. And I feel that when you're able to tune in and gain in certain types of information, pick up on certain information that is not being said out loud, that actually is an advantage for you in the business world, in the corporate world, because what happens is you're able to address someone, speak to them in a way that really lands with them. Because you're hearing what they're saying beneath, in between the words. You're hearing what they really mean with what they say. And so you're able to speak in a way and connect with them in a way where they, it builds trust, it builds, builds respect, and they feel seen and understood. Now, obviously, this is a skill that people are going to want to develop over time, but it starts with trusting your intuition. So it's more like on an average workday, you'll run into situations where you'll have, meetings with your coworkers and whatnot, and maybe someone is saying something that you just know intuitively in your gut it's not true, or they're lying, or maybe they're making something up, and you can sense that. And there's ways and opportunities from that instance where instead of necessarily calling them out and creating a commotion or a confrontation, but there's opportunities to perhaps, see that maybe why they're saying what they're saying is because of fear. There's a fear that's underlying that. You're kind of sensing they're afraid of revealing something, and maybe you can help them, support them, address them from behind the scenes. That could then, build that relationship in a stronger way. I know this is just like a random example, and I don't know if it happens often enough in corporate, but I feel as though trusting your intuition, where it's like, okay, if I do things this way versus what everyone else is saying, I feel it could get better results. Maybe, yeah, lean into that, try it out, see what your intuition was trying to tell you. And if you're right, then that will build this reputation that you have for yourself, that people will lean on you because they trust your guidance. They trust the advice that you have to give because they can trust that the sense that you have is trustworthy. I mean, it's just, I don't know what the word, any other way to describe it. As an example, when I was a recruiter, I relied on my intuition a lot, and I didn't know it. But I knew that as soon as I looked at a name and I looked at their resume, and I could just go on LinkedIn, look at their photo, I just knew what company they'd be a match for. I just knew where they would be a fit. And you could just say that's like a recruiter's instinct, and that's with experience, but I had a really high hit rate with my recruitments. I broke records as a recruiter, and it was because, like, from one phone conversation I knew, okay, they're gonna take you in this job. Like, not only will they interview you, but they're gonna like you and they're gonna hire you. Like, I can just sense there's a match there. So over time, my colleagues, my boss, my managers, they would really rely on me to say, okay, who do you think would be a match? And it wasn't just about finding someone and hope that they would work. It'd be, okay, I have 5 people in front of me. There's this person here that I feel really strongly about. Let's put them forward and let's really coach them to make sure that they get the job, because I think they'll have a high chance. It's those situations where you're trusting yourself more. And this is where I think quiet achievers, we have insecurities, self-doubts, and low self-esteem at times and low confidence at times because we're not trusting ourselves. We're not trusting our voice enough. Been taught, don't use your voice, work harder, put your head down, stay silent, don't talk out of line. And because of that, we've not learned to express ourselves. So I don't know where I'm going with this, but this whole idea of trusting yourself and tuning into your intuition is so key, because ultimately that is what's going to lead to the career growth and the opportunities that you're looking for.
I really love looking at intuition as the opposite of self-doubt. Having self-doubt on the one hand and self-trust and intuition on the other hand. And yes,
Yeah.
we grow up with so much self-doubt ingrained in us. And for me, a really interesting moment when I realized my intuition, not work related at all, but when my kids are sick, and I wonder if all moms feel that way, I just know. I don't even need to take their temperature. I just know. Like, even in the evening, I just know she's going to wake up with a fever tomorrow. And for the
Mm.
longest time, my husband would be like, "You're crazy. Like, she's healthy. Everything's fine." I'm like, and I would push it away. I'm like, "Oh, you're right. She is fine." Like, and then I was proven right in the morning. And that happened to happen at least 10 times where I was like, I think I can just trust my intuition here. And that was for me the
Yeah.
moment where I was like, oh, I can trust this feeling inside of me. There is some inner knowing I have, the intuition. That's right. And after that, I was able to lean into that more and more in all areas of my life.
Yes, I love that. That is exactly, I think, where it starts is that you start noticing patterns where like, oh, I was right about that. I was right about that. And then you and that for me is how my intuition has grown in the last little while too, is trusting that what I'm seeing, people are resonating with. And so that's what you were talking about in Toronto is that I would sort of basically tune into someone energetically and I could sense the block that they had, but I would also sense the backstory, why they felt that block, which I know sounds so crazy and out of this world and woo woo, but I was able to share with them. I feel like it's coming from this part of your, family or this upbringing of this, of relating to this and that. And I would just start piecing it together and they'd be like, yes, that's exactly what it is. And I honestly don't even know how I do it, but I've done it enough that it's like, okay, I trust that if I'm getting something, I'm just going to share it. And if it resonates, it does. If it doesn't, I have no attachment to it either.
And you blew everyone away in Toronto, Linda. I experienced it for myself. I saw it for others. The way you can lean into your intuition and communicate what you see and sense just brought the biggest breakthroughs for the people in minutes, which was mind blowing. It was mind blowing. And it was just so amazing to experience that in real life with you there.
Yeah, I remember when you were like, Linda, this should be the only thing that you do. Like, this should be the only, and I'm like, oh, really? I don't know. And I'm still sitting here, Theresa, still remembering that you said that. And it's like, well, I'm not really doing that even still. I mean, obviously I'm in the midst of promoting the book and all of that, but that could be a conversation for another time, perhaps,
And
to
that
bring
was
that to the
my
forefront.
intuition in that moment, because that is what I do, right? In the career clarity work, when I work with clients, once we get to a certain point where I'm like, it's so clear what you're meant to do. It is so clear. And that's also my intuition. It's just there, I feel 100% certain. And that was the same. And I heard you talk. That was right in the beginning when everyone introduced themselves. And after you introduced yourself, in that moment, I was like, God, I need to tell her. It's so clear. It is so crystal clear here. And then I saw you doing it after on me. And I'm like, oh my God, Linda, this is what you're meant to do. So that was part of my intuition. And it's so beautiful that when it lands.
Amazing. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, we could talk after about how I could do that
Yes.
more.
Yes, we will. Okay. Linda, now we got to talk more about The Quiet Achiever. Your book just came out last week, which is so exciting. I already have a copy in my hand. Why this book? Why now? Tell us all about it.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'll tell you the backstory as to how I got this book deal, and then that'll lead us into what the book is about. But essentially, it was about 6 months after my husband had pretty much became like was considered a miracle, had fully healed, and my focus and my husband's focus was just our kids. We were just, going to cottages with our friends. We were enjoying the summer. We were just living our family life. And I went to bed one night and it was early in the morning, like 5 in the morning, where I had this very vivid dream seeing a hardcover book, my journal that was called Express Your Inner Confidence at the top of my ceiling where I was sleeping. So it was as if my eyes were open and I could see this book just like, oh, and it said my name by Linda Raynier. And I remember waking up being like, oh my gosh, I could still see that in my mind. That was so vivid and so clear. So I was like, you know what? Because that was so clear, I probably should take that as a sign. So I started researching. I always knew in my heart throughout my entire life that I have a book within me, maybe more, but I knew I always had a book in me. But I did not think at that time was the time to write a book. And I started researching, how do I write a book? How do I get a publisher? How do I get it? Blah, 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 all this stuff. And I started getting a little deflated because it's a long process. You have to write the manuscript. That'll take like a year. Then you have to find a publisher and an agent and all of these. And so I kind of put it on the back burner for just a little bit. By that point, it was November. Next thing you know, December rolls around. I get an email in my inbox from Wiley, which is the publisher for this book. And I thought it was spam, but because I'd been doing so much research, I thought maybe I put in my email for some fake thing and they were pretending to be a publisher because they said in the email, we would love to partner with you. And I thought, what did they want with me? Anyways, I jump on the Zoom call and it was legit. It was an actual editor from Wiley. And she said, Linda, I found your stuff online. I found your YouTube channel. I think you're great. And she asks me point blank, have you ever thought about writing a book? Because if you have, we'd love to publish it. And I thought, oh my God, that means I get to skip the line. I don't have to do this whole 1 year thing of figuring it out on my own. They're going to publish my book. And in that moment, I was just so excited because I knew that's why I had the dream. And that's why all these months of research, because within 24 hours, I was able to turn in a very robust book proposal for them, which I don't think they expected. But I was able to do that because, of course, I had done research on what was I going to write about, what did I want. And so at first, I thought the book was going to be about helping professionals to get promoted at work. That's what I initially thought this was going to be about. I knew that I had saw the dream of express your inner confidence, but I thought, oh, be more confident so you get promoted at work. But then as I started writing the book, I realized, no, 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 the message has to go so much deeper. It's not just about getting promotions because I don't feel like people necessarily want promotions, even though that's a nice to have. I think they want to feel more confident within themselves. And then I asked the publisher to help me extend the deadline to October 14th rather than August. So I asked them for like 3 months and they said, sure, no problem, because I ended up rewriting those 5 chapters and rewriting the entire book from there to being the quiet achiever. And so the book now is really, it's a very deeply personal, like I do share my stories, but I also share a lot of my clients' stories, but it's an internal journey that people are going to go through when they read the book. It is not so much about do ABC steps externally to get what you want in life. It's more, these are the steps that you need to do internally to get to where you want to from within. If you want to feel grounded, at ease, and be able to express yourself confidently, authentically, this book is for you. If you're someone who struggles with this self-doubt, with this insecurity, you're also feeling stuck in your career, which is, I think, a lot of people right now. I talk a lot about careers because that's my bread and butter and my area of expertise. I talk about feeling stuck in your career, feeling as though you've hit a plateau. You don't know if you want to move up. You don't know if you want to do something different. All of this is relevant to, I would say, the quiet achiever of 2025 and probably for the next few years. Who is looking for more. They know that they're meant for more. They know that they want more for themselves, but it's not necessarily, a fancier job or, more responsibilities. They're looking for more within. And this book is going to help you to do the inner work, the self-investigation, the honest internal work to identify who you are beneath the surface of your achievements, your success. Quiet achievers, we're actually very successful people on the outside because we've worked hard and we've gotten, a lot of accolades and achievements and all these things, but on the inside, we may still feel empty. And that I can speak from experience is that you can have and hit all the boxes but still not feel fulfilled. And that is my mission with this book is to guide quiet achievers to turn inwards, to find who they truly are beneath the surface of all the surface level achievements and identity that they've developed and created for themselves, and to be able to step out into the world with this sense of ease, calm, and authenticity.
I love that so much, Linda. And it is the book we need in 2025. This is the question so many people struggle with. And it's so beautiful in a way. Your book can guide people on this journey and come alongside your journey and the journey of your clients, and then start their own journey towards finding more fulfillment and embracing more of who they are.
Yes, that is
Where
the
can
goal. That is, yeah.
where can our audience find it?
They can go to, well, now that the book is out, it's pretty much everywhere where are sold. If you're in the US, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, Canada, Indigo, Amazon, internationally, in the UK, it's sold at Waterstones, which I know is a very popular bookstore. But ultimately, you just Google it and you'll find it now that it's out in the world. So I hope people enjoyed. I also did the Audible version too. So I was the narrator of my own book, which I'm very proud of. And For those that like to listen to Audible, they'll hear my voice narrating the book.
It's so beautiful that you got to record that yourself. That's amazing, Linda. And we're going to make sure to include all of those links in the show notes so that everyone listening in can go and get The Quiet Achiever. It is an absolute must read. And also get a copy or two as Christmas presents because we're just heading into the holidays. And
yes,
to end with great. Linda, what is one truth or one takeaway that you want quiet achievers who are listening to this episode remember about their power that they have internally?
Exactly that is that the power is within, that it is not from achieving, acquiring, doing anything more. You have it already all within you. And all it takes, and I say all as if it's an easy thing, but it takes the willingness to turn inward, to feel the feelings, to work through those fear-based beliefs, and to identify who you are beneath all of that. And so that's the takeaway, is that it's all within you. Turn inwards. When something happens, look within. And that's how everything will shift.
And the Quiet Achiever walks you through step by step on how to do exactly that. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here today. It was such an honor to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you, Theresa, for having me. I loved it. Loved the conversation.
Wow. Was that not one of the most powerful conversations that we've had on here? If you're a quiet achiever who's been chasing gold stars and external approval while secretly wondering, when is it finally my turn to feel fulfilled? I hope that this episode gave you a moment to breathe, reflect, and say, yeah, it's time for something more aligned. Linda's journey is such a beautiful reminder that clarity doesn't always come from doing more. Sometimes it comes from doing the deeper work. And her message that the answers we're all looking for, yeah, they're already within us. If you are ready to stop second guessing yourself and finally figure out what you're meant to do next, I've got you. You can book a free consultation call with me and let's unlock that career clarity together in record time. And of course, don't forget to join me again next week for another episode full of insights, inspiration, and actionable advice on finding a career you love, because you shouldn't have and you don't have to settle. Keep chasing what makes you come alive, and I will see you back here next week on Career Clarity Unlocked. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Career Clarity Unlocked. If you're feeling stuck in that what's next spiral and are ready to finally break free, let's chat. You can book your free career clarity call where we'll uncover what's really important to you, tackle any obstacles holding you back, and map out your best next step. Schedule your free 30-minute call today on careerbloomcoaching.com. And before you head out, be sure to follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you never miss an episode. If today's conversation gave you new insights and inspiration, please leave a review. It really helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. And don't forget to share this episode with a friend or on social media. Your support truly means the world. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you next time.